Now, the Thrustmaster T598 is probably one of the most aggressively priced direct drive racing wheels that you can get right now. It promises to deliver at up to 10 newton meters of torque with its overshoot capabilities, and at a price point that's less than half of most of its competition, including the Logitech G Pro wheel. In fact, you can get the PlayStation/PC version for under $500, which includes the wheelbase, a basic sport rim, and a two-piece metal pedal board. Furthermore, since Thrustmaster has one of the largest libraries of accessories, you can even just buy the wheelbase alone for $400 and pair up with a quick release wheel rim, whether it's from the newer generation or older generation Thrustmaster products, and even pair up a old shifter and pedal board set if you're coming from a previous generation Thrustmaster setup. The crazy thing is, at this price point, Thrustmaster has really made the T598 almost a budget-friendly or entry-level sim racing wheel. Typically at this price point, you have belt or gear driven systems that have smaller motors. And with those smaller motors, you typically don't have as much torque or the response or feedback or realism that is found on most direct drive wheelbases. But most direct drive wheelbases use a radial style flux motor. But on the T598, they want to reduce the amount of magnets and copper coils to bring down the price point and also improve some of the cogging issues that you have with overheating large format radial direct drive systems. Now, thus, with this approach, instead of using a radial style direct drive motor, they're actually using what they call an axial style direct drive motor. You could see some of the details published on Thrustmaster's website when they initially launched the wheel. Now, with an axial flux style motor, the magnets are aligned perpendicularly to the drive shaft itself, and the stator runs along the ends of the opposite poles, rather around the circumference found on most radial style motors. The big benefit is efficiency with less copper coils, less overall magnets, and better torque delivery with improved heat management and almost no cogging. The end result promises a smoother, more linear force feedback system that's highly responsive. Now, the motor can deliver 5 newton meters of constant torque, but it has the capabilities of a boost factor of 100%, something Thrustmaster calls controlled overshoots. And with this 100% factor, you can actually feel up to 10 newton meters of torque in a given situation in a brief moment. So for example, when you're driving down the road, you hit something or you lose control, you can feel actually a lot more power delivered through the wheel in a given instant. Now, at times, some of these control overshoots can feel a little bit jarring since you're getting a lot of power all of a sudden, and it doesn't really feel very consistent with the overall experience of the motor. So you can control the settings to tone it down, but it does give you the oomph or power delivered by much more powerful direct drive systems, such as Thrustmaster's own T818 and even the Logitech G Pro wheel, but at a much more smaller form factor and at a much more cheaper price point. Now, the response time on the T818 using the axial flux motor is definitely a highlight. It feels very quick to respond to whatever sim you're using. I basically tested mostly on iRacing and Assetto Corsa, but in all those instances, I felt very connected to the sim, and any input that you give, it reacts very quickly and seamlessly. The motor can also deliver high frequency vibrations through the Harmony technology, which delivers sensations in the road, tire feel, as well as when you're losing grip. And it's similar to what we experienced with Logitech True Force, although not quite as detailed, but a nice added benefit nonetheless. Now, as far as mounting goes, you can mount the wheelbase on pretty much any surface. It comes with a adapter plate with some clamps, so you can put it onto your desk and actually use it without a sim racing rig. But the pedal board really needs to be anchored down to some place if you don't want it moving around. And I would highly recommend some sort of sim rig or something that you can mount both the wheelbase and pedals to. That will definitely improve your overall experience. Now, as far as mounting the wheelbase onto a rig, I specifically used my next level sim rig, and it mounted perfectly fine with the adapter plate. However, without the adapter plate, it doesn't line up to any of the holes, and that will depend upon what rig you're using. But typically with the adapter plate, you can line up at least 3 or 4 holes to mount it securely onto your rig. I do, however, like the fact that it actually comes with that adapter plate, since my experience with the T818 was kind of negative. It didn't really come with any adapter plate whatsoever, and I had to drill some new holes onto my rig. Luckily, that was not the case with the T598. Now, due to the axial flex motor built inside, the shape of the T598 is quite unique. It's a flatter pie shape that's taller compared to most kind of tubular shaped direct drive wheelbases. So that might impede your viewing depending on what position your monitors are installed in. So if the monitors are directly mounted in front of you, a little bit lower, it might impede your view of your tachometer and speedometer and some of your instruments. But I actually mounted my monitors right above the wheel, so I didn't encounter that. But due to the fact that it is kind of obstructing your wheel view position, you just want to be mindful of whatever monitor or display system that you're using with this thing. Now, in terms of the controls on the wheelbase itself, it actually employs 4 large tactile style buttons and a center mounted color LCD. Once you get used to it, the navigation through the menu system is actually quite intuitive, and you can change almost every aspect of the wheel, including the force feedback system, pedal sensitivity, the rotation setting of your wheel. There's even a gear jolt setting, which will give you some force feedback when you go up or down your gearbox, and you can have medium, low, or high, or turn off altogether. The force feedback settings are actually impressively detailed. You can tune things like gain levels, spring rate, the dampener, and even friction and inertia settings within the wheelbase itself in real time. The inertia setting is actually particularly interesting. This basically simulates the momentum of a real steering wheel rack, which typically has a lot of moving parts, and through the sim, you can actually dial the amount of heaviness or kind of momentum that you feel within the steering rack itself when you deliver sudden inputs or changes depending upon your road conditions. Furthermore, you can save all these settings within a couple of different presets, both within the wheelbase itself and on the PC software. The race dash screen obviously can be used for in-game telemetry readings, whether that's tachometer speed, your speedo, the gear position that you're in your gearbox, as well as the place that you're in the race, as well as lap times and things like that. This works pretty flawlessly on iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione, but obviously other sims might have some issues displaying in-game telemetry if they don't support wheelbases that offer that feature. Now, moreover, let's talk about the budget factor of this wheelbase, especially if you get the basic bundle for the $500 mark, and that's the sport rim that comes with that bundle. It's a very plastically toy-like rim, mostly plastic construction with fake rubberized finish, and it definitely is utilitarian for the most part. If you get the PlayStation version, you'll see that the orientation of the shape buttons are mounted perpendicularly or horizontally, and that might get a little confusing when you're navigating through the menu on PlayStation, but if you're using it on PC and you're using a mouse and keyboard, it's not that big of a deal. But certainly the positioning and the orientation of some of the buttons can be a little bit questionable, but you can always map things around for your preference. The big highlight is definitely the shifters built into the sport rim, which definitely feel very responsive, super tactile, and actually quite durable as well. Now, since you have this new T-style quick release system from Thrustmaster, I would highly recommend, if you want a more realistic experience for your sim, getting the other wheels that are available on Thrustmaster's website, including the Hypercar Sport Wheel, which features a more metal construction with real Alcantara. You can also get their yoke and rally style wheels on top of some of the legacy wheels that might not utilize the new standard for the quick release, but you can actually buy an adapter that will actually utilize some of the older generation wheel rims that Thrustmaster has offered through the years. Furthermore, you can also pair this wheelbase with older generation shifters and handbrake sets if you have those accessories or want to upgrade in the future, and there's plenty of rear I/O to support those things, and even use older generation pedal boards. But the pedal board that actually comes with the T598 is actually really great. It's an all-metal base, and most of the uprights are also metal for the pedal components themselves. The only part that's plastic is actually the face plates of the pedals themselves, which is fine for the accelerator, but might be a little bit problematic for the brake, especially if you're an aggressive braker. But for the most part, I think the plastic itself is actually quite durable. And if the plastic breaks, it's probably not that big of a deal to upgrade to a metal faceplate or something similar, or even just get another plastic piece. The size of the pedal board is fairly small, but if you have it mounted onto your sim rig, it should be stable enough for the most part. It's not that great if you're just lying it on the flat floor on a carpet or something like that, because it will probably move around since it doesn't have a lot of substance and weight in general. But when it's mounted in place, it's actually very, very stable. And you do have some adjustability on the pedal board itself, including the amount of tension you want on the accelerator and brake. It just uses a basic spring and dampener, but there are 3 positions where you can anchor the pedal arm itself, and the closer you have the pedal arm mounted to, the more tension you're going to experience, and the further away, the more looser it'll feel. It's fine for the accelerator, but for the brake feel itself, it's pretty okay for a spring. But if you're used to a load cell and really adding a lot of pressure rather than a distance, that might be a little bit cumbersome. Currently right now there's not a load cell offered, but Thrustmaster has promised to deliver some sort of a load cell upgrade option for this pedal board. Now, as far as some of the limitations on this wheelbase, I definitely say that the direct drive system has adequate power. It's not going to give you the amount of force and capabilities of a larger format radial style direct drive wheel that has more than 10 newton meters of torque, certainly like the Logitech G Pro wheel and even Thrustmaster's own T598. But for the most part, I think it makes it up with the consistency, reliability, and responsiveness from the force feedback system. It's definitely better than most traditional belt-driven force feedback systems with smaller motors. So you are getting definitely a real direct drive motor for a pretty significantly low price point. But I don't see that if you're going to use this seriously for iRacing, and for example, if you're used to open wheel style cars that don't have any power steering, you are going to feel that the steering wheel is going to be not as heavy and not as aggressive compared to a more powerful system. And even with its controlled overshoots capabilities, it really can't handle the torque level in some of those situations where you really need some very heavy steering to replicate the actual racing environment. However, for GT style racing, which typically have some sort of a power steering assist, it actually feels quite realistic in my opinion, and offers a decent amount of realism and immersions with the right amount of power delivered through the system. Furthermore, some of the other concerns I had, just like the T598, the quick release system is definitely very functional and usable, but it does have a decent amount of plastic components inside and is not as robust as some of the all-metal quick release systems found on most of the competitors, including Fanatec, Moza, and even Logitech these days. Now, in summary, I have to say that this direct drive system from Thrustmaster is actually quite impressive. The Axial Flux drive delivers extremely responsive force feedback at a level that's pretty adequate, like we mentioned before, for most entry-level racers. And with the controlled overshoot capabilities, it gives you the power of much more powerful and larger direct drive systems, but in a smaller form factor and package. On top of that, I really do like the overall package in general. For that $500, you get a very adequate overall setup that's very usable for pretty much anybody out there, whether you're on a table or desktop surface or with a full dedicated sim racing setup. So it's very versatile, and plus with the relatively extensive lineup of wheel rim options, shifters, and pedal boards accessories, both from the legacy products and the new generation of Thrustmaster products, I definitely think that Thrustmaster has made a pretty compelling option over here for most mid to entry level sim racers, and I would definitely recommend it over the T598 since in real life both wheels actually feel quite similar in terms of a general force feedback performance, and this definitely feels a lot more quicker and responsive than the T598 given the Axial Flux motor, and it's a complete package, which is an excellent starting point for newcomers newcomers to the sim racing world. Definitely want to thank Thrustmaster for giving us the opportunity to test out this wheelbase and this entire bundle. Without them, this video wouldn't be possible, and I want to thank you guys so much for continuing to watch our sim racing content. If you are interested in other videos featuring this wheelbase or others within this price point, definitely let me know. But in the meantime, please make sure to like and subscribe and have post notifications turned on, and we'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.